Okay, so let's start with the topic of motivation. If anyone have difficulty in listening or any questions during lecture, you can ask in chat option. Okay, so among the section C we have covered so far the topic of learning, the classical conditioning, the operant conditioning, and the topic of uh, okay. So the purpose of adding this section C in the behavioral sciences is that the topics which you have learned about the ethics, the topic which you have learned about the communication in your section A, in your section B. So by studying these psychological factors, you guys will got an insight about the psychological processes. So uh, today we will start with the topic of the motivation. So let's first relate the importance of motivation for the dental students, as the importance of everything is very important, because if you guys have no idea why we are studying, then obviously you can't. uh, okay, so motivation is basically that force that pushes us towards a goal, that pushes us towards something, towards a task, towards an external stimulus. You can learn the motivation, you can assume the motivation as a core psychological process, our cognitive process, which is a result of our response towards some environmental stimulus, the response which our mind which we generate towards some external stimulus. For example, in the future you will have to see the patients, you have to book the appointment for the patient. While if you book the appointment for the 10 patients or the 15 patients, to advise a root canal, the scaling procedures for the 10 or 20 patients, then among the 20 only 1 2 5 or maybe 10 will show up. Okay, so to know this core difference, that why not every individual responds in the same way towards a stimulus, the process of motivation, to understand this motivation is very important. In the same way, you guys took a lot of effort, you guys are doing a lot of effort, you are totally ignoring this BS thing. Why? Because there is a difference in the motivation levels. Let's see why some individuals are responding towards a stimulus, whereas others are relaxing, or the others didn't bother to respond towards a stimulus. So today you will learn what is motivation, what are its different types, what is the Maslow's theory or the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and how you will apply in your clinical settings or in your hospital settings in future. So as you can see on your screens, I put an image. So let's concentrate on it. Uh, okay. हाँ, वीडियो यार बंद कर दूं? हाँ ठीक है. अब देखो स्क्रीन आ रही है. Okay, can you guys now see this presentation? If yes, then please type in the message. Okay, good enough. Okay, so now concentrate on this image. No one can motivate you until you motivate yourself. Reason being is that motivation is something which generates inside someone's brain, inside someone's mind. Motivation is derived from our wishes, motivation is derived from our brought up, motivation is derived from our instincts. Okay, so motivation is purely a thing, purely a response to of an individual towards a environmental stimuli. Let's see how it's a response, how I'm relating it to towards the basic cognitive processes. So first define this thing, motivation. Motivation is basically the driving force which results in persistent behavior which is directed towards a particular goal. Now concentrate on this definition 01 box, blue box. First thing, let's divide this definition into the three distinct parts. First thing, there should be a driving force, means that there should be an internal kick which rush by after receiving this force, after receiving this kick, someone will rush towards its goal. And this driving force or this driving kick will result because of something known as the goal. What is goal? Which challenges our inner self, which challenges our cognition, which challenges our inner mind. Okay? So now let's redefine it. So motivation is a driving force which results, which produces a persistent behavior or a persistent running towards a goal. Now this goal can be a result of the external stimulus, or this goal can be a result of the internal stimulus. Let me explain this. Please clear this thing at the start, otherwise the next onward theories would be confusing. Okay, what are the examples of the external goal? For example, a test on every Tuesday and every Friday. This is an example of the external goal. The administration, the college have put a test, so all of you guys are studying, all of you guys are taking the slides, searching the internet, etc. So motivation results as a because of this external goal. Now, the external goal is not present in every situation. Sometimes this goal is a mere result of the internal motivation or the internal stimulus. For example, you are sitting quietly, you have a result, you are waiting for your result, then suddenly a notification pop up, and you perceive it as that the result has been announced. So you now start searching the internet, you now start using your mobile. There is a lot of there is a storm of thoughts in your mind, etc. So this goal can be internal or this goal can be external. In short, nutshell, motivation is a force which simply pushes us towards a goal or towards an external stimulus. Motivation is simply a force which nature has put in our minds in order to solve, in order to deal with the various external environmental stimuli. Or we can redefine it, it's a need or desire that energizes our behavior, that fuel up our behavior. Without motivation there is no behavior. Without motivation there is no energy in ourselves. Without motivation we are like we can't do anything, even we can't eat, even we can't sleep. Hopefully it's clear. Now there are certain features or there are the certain distinguishing points about the motivation. For example, we cannot observe it directly. We cannot observe the motivations of the people directly. We cannot observe why someone is forcing you that doctor please pull my tooth out. We cannot observe that what is the motivation behind getting this orthodontic treatment, that he wants to align his or her teeth. We cannot observe this. What we can observe is only the behavior, which is the derivation of this motivation thing. Okay? So always keep in mind, motivation cannot be observed directly. There are always assumptions regarding the motivations. For example, a doctor, a dentist in the future, he is doing the practice free of cost for and putting a label that I'm doing for to serve the humanity, to serve the poor people. Whereas, in short, the underlying purpose is that he may be gonna appear in some future elections, so he want to secure his vote bank. So you cannot describe the motivations of the people. Okay? Yes, we can directly observe it in the form of behavior. We can relate the key events of behavior that by assumption regarding the motivation, motivation is a result of inference which is drawn by behavior of other people, that how the other people responds towards us, how the environment responds towards us. As I said earlier, that the motivation is simply nothing, it's a way of responding our things towards the environment. Yes, motivations contain the powerful tools by which we can explain the behavior of someone, by which we can explain that why an individual is so motivated regarding this particular thing. But again, let me explain one thing, that the motivation is the most is the most misperceived thing about the behavior of someone. You cannot certainly say that this individual is doing this thing, so the reason most probably is this. Okay? But you can relate it, and you can relate it in a relatively predictable way. Please focus on this thing, relatively predictable, not the absolute. We can make predictions about the future behavior, yes, by observing the current behavior, by observing the current attitude of someone regarding an external stimulus. You can presume that this individual future likely to act in this way. Why? Because I said that motivation is a result of, is a way to is a way of responding an individual towards an external stimulus. Now, how the individual learned this way? He learned this way in his or her brought up. He learned this way of responding via the cultural values. He learned this way via his own lifetime experiences. You will learn in detail when you guys will study about the personality thing. What is personality? How it's derived? What's its relevance? Then you will guys know the importance that how our behavior is derived, right? But right now, and just you have to learn two things. Motivation cannot be observed directly. We have to assume it in the form of the behavior of other people, and based on this behavior, based on this perception, we can easily relate it with the future behavior of a person. Like a patient of yours in future, he is always skipping the appointments. The most likely cause is he will skip the appointment in the future. A student who used to fail an exam, there is a likely chance that he or she will fail in future. Now, let's make a distinction between the motivation and what are the motives. So far, it's clear or not? Please type in the comments. Motives are something. Okay, motives are the basic framework of your motivation, or basic fabric of your motivation thing. If we can pinpoint it, that how you will. I didn't see any comment yet. You guys are there? Okay, good, good enough, good enough. Okay. Okay, so what are the motives? Motives are simply the building blocks of your motivation. The thing, those core processes by which the motivation process itself build off. Okay? So motives are the reason for doing something, or in short, motives are the goals. Motives are the unconscious tasks. The reason why you are responding in a particular way towards the stimulus. Motives, yes, as like motivations, motives are the subcomponent of motivation, so they also cannot be observed directly. And as like the motivation, motives are also an inference from the behaviors. So in future, if the MCQ came in your exam that the motives are dash, so motives are the subcomponents of your motivation, or motives are the those building blocks from which your motivation drives. So now define the, let's describe the types of this motivation thing. Motivation basically classified into two things. One is the intrinsic one and other one is the extrinsic one. Let me recall the first slide. As we said that motivation is a driving force because of this particular goal. So if the goal is located in the external environment outside the mind of an individual, then this type of motivation we will classify as extrinsic, as the name depicts. But if this particular goal is located inside the mind of an individual, then we will divide this motivation as the intrinsic. Simple as that, as the name depicts. So based upon this goal thing, based upon the stimulus thing, there are two types of motivation. One is the intrinsic one, whose goals or whose stimulus these are located inside the mind of an individual, and one type, other type is the extrinsic motivation, whose the goals, whose the environmental stimulus, these are located in the environment or outside the mind of that particular individual. Okay, let's discriminate the some qualities. Let's discriminate some characteristics of this intrinsic as well as the extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation, it brings about the autonomy, belongs to your belonging thing. It's related something with the curiosity. It is something which is related to your own learning, your own mastery, and your own meanings. So in a nutshell, what is an intrinsic motivation? Intrinsic motivation is that which kicks inside from your brain. Simple as that. What is intrinsic motivation? Intrinsic motivation is that there is a stimulus and the working force is drive inside your brain, inside your mind, more precisely. How? Let's say there is a chapter of, let's say, if I'm giving you an assignment, let's read a novel in this class. So all of you will left all your businesses and you will involve in reading that particular novel. You will involve in reading that particular book, etc. So intrinsic motivation is that which kicks us from the inside of our mind, which kicks us inside our, uh, uh, whose stimulus is located inside our mind. For example, the book of your particular interest, the hobby of your particular interest. For example, you're watching a season and you liked it, so most probably you will watch it for the whole night. Whereas if I am giving you an assignment that prepare the 10 page or the 10 slide assignment of pharmacology, then most likely you guys will fed up in half an hour or in 15 minutes. So the reason being is that because the former activity, that is watching a movie or watching a season, it is something which you likes from your heart. Okay. So this type of motivation is known as the intrinsic motivation, when the force is from originates inside, that nobody is compelling you, nobody is putting you that you should do this, you should do this. If someone from the environment or anything from the environment is pushing you towards a goal, is pushing you towards a stimulus, then this type of motivation would be known as the extrinsic motivation. For example, you do an activity for the sake of badges, for the sake of stars, for the sake of from the fear of failure, from the fear of punishment. So all these examples are the examples of the extrinsic motivation. So in future, if you want to motivate your patients, if you want to motivate yourself for the learning, you have to bring the this sort of intrinsic motivation or the extrinsic one. So how you will bring this intrinsic motivation, we will describe it in your personality thing. But in nutshell, intrinsic motivation only cultivates if our internal and the external goals are matching. Let me explain in the later slides in the Maslow's theory. But if in future exam an MCQ or SCQ come that which motivation is more powerful, then it's always the intrinsic ones. So this is an example of extrinsic motivation, that this guy is doing exercise because of the fear of this trainer. Now, how this motivation thing works, how we can improve it, there are theories. Obviously, the basic theory is known as the drive reduction theory. As science is all about the logical knowledge, science is all about the factual knowledge. So the scientists, the psychologists, they describe some theories. Among them, the famous is, oh, sorry, purple not, this thing that is written in the middle of screen, the motivation, the drive reduction theory. Let's divide it into the three words. Motivation is the result of drive that originates because of an external stimulus, and as this drive reduces, this thing motivation again reduces. If this drive is not satisfied, if this drive is not if we cannot fulfill it, then this motivation cannot gone. Got it? So motivation is the result of drive. What is drive? Drive is simply a force which pushes us, which pull us towards a goal. Okay. So according to this theory, motivation is all about the drive reduction. Meanwhile, we reduce drive by our behavior, then the motivation is fulfilled. Otherwise, the motivation is still there. So let's focus on from the left side of the screen. There is a need, there is a biological need, like the food, like the water, like the sleep. Then our internal hemostasis is have gone into the disequilibrium. There is always an equilibrium and the disequilibrium, as you guys have studied in your physiology classes, right? like our the hunger process, like our the thirst process, etc. So because of the disequilibrium in our, now I'm reading the left side of the screen, so stay with me. The disequilibrium originates because of a disbalance in the basic physiological systems. For example, in the summer night you're studying and suddenly you feel thirst. Okay? So there's a disequilibrium because uh, the, uh, the water balance in your body has disrupted or gone into the disequilibrium. Because of this disequilibrium, the need will emerge. Because of this need, there is a drive. What is drive? Drive is that thing, is that internal force which you are feeling inside your body or inside your mind. For example, you are standing in summers in a road with the full sunshine, so that anxiety which originates in your body, this anxiety is known as a drive. Hopefully I explain it. Because of need. Why need? Need originates because of the disequilibrium. Under the pressure of this need, the physiological system will originate a drive in your mind, that anxiety in your mind. Oh, now imagine you're sitting on the chair, you're reading a book, you're reading the pharmacology book, you're reading the dental materials book, then suddenly in the summer hot night you got some thirst. ठीक है. Up under this thirst, that anxiety which originates now, there is a need, there is an urge to drink water. That need, that urge, that anxiety, that stress is known as the drive. Because of this drive, there will be the induction of the drive reducing behaviors. Reducing behaviors would be, in case of thirst, drinking; in case of hunger, eating; in case of the mental exhaustion, the sleeping, etc. Because if this drive reducing behaviors are sufficient to achieve the homeostasis or to achieve the equilibrium or to cancel this disequilibrium, then our body will again go into the equilibrium and this need or this motivation will end over here. If this equilibrium is not achieved because of these drive reducing behaviors, for example, you got up for drinking a glass of water and there is no water in your room, then what will happen? That this equilibrium still is in the disequilibrium state, or this homeostasis is still in the, is not in the, your physiological system is not in the hemostatic phase. So what will happen? That this need and this loop is keep on going, right? So to break this loop, what we have to do, the drive reduction behavior should be enough to bring back our equilibrium, the physiological equilibrium I'm talking about, right? So what this theory explains, this theory explains that the motivation arises from the disequilibrium of our physiological system, because our physiological system become disrupted, goes into the disequilibrium under the various environmental stimulus. Because of those environmental stimulus, their body will generate an urge, body will generate a drive. Because of that drive, there would be the result of the drive reduction behaviors, and the drive reduction behavior will lead towards the, again, the equilibrium of this system. So this theory explains that how the basic motivation works. This theory is very good. Let's explain the basic physiological things, basic physiological systems based upon this theory. And let's see what are the shortcomings of this theory and what are the good points of this theory. Regarding the good points, let me tell you one thing. This theory is fair enough in explaining the biological motivations. Let me tell you what are the biological motivations. For example, biological motivations are those things which are rooted in our physiological state of body. In short, those motivations or those things which are necessary to keep us alive, right? Which are necessary to survive in this planet earth, on this planet earth. So biological motivation is something which is rooted in the physiological state of body. For example, hunger, thirst, sexual desire, sleep, temperature regulation, pain avoidance, need for oxygen, blah blah, etc. Body maintains hemostasis by this theory, by this drive reduction theory. So let's see these biological motivations one by one. First among them is the sexual motivation. You have read in detail about the puberty, about the adulthood in your physiology classes in the first years. So the sexual motivation is basically the result of our sex hormones. It is necessary to reproduce. It is necessary uh, to survive on this planet. So these hormonal thing, this body thing, it is driven by our external stimulus. There is a way, there is a genes encoded in our brain. We have learned in our developmental sequence how to fulfill this motivation. So our desire came under the influence of hormones, disequilibrium, drive emerges, then there are the drive reducing behaviors, that is the sexual satisfaction, and then the system goes on. Now, another type of basic biological motivation is a social motivation. Humans are the social animals. So this theory is very good as far as this biological motivation is concerned, because let me revise this thing again. It states that disequilibrium, drive, drive reducing behaviors, then again the equilibrium or the homeostasis. But let's apply this whole thing on this social motivation. What is social motivation? Social motivation means the way we influence the other people who are living aside by in our society. For example, at your level are the colleagues, are your class fellows, are your teachers. So there is a way you got motivation, you influence them, you are influenced by them. So let's apply this theory. That can This theory is able to explain this social motivation things. So let me define what is the social motivation. Concentrate on the box 01. Social motivation is a result of learned motives that involve the other people. Social motivation is something which is not rooted in your genes. Yes, it is rooted in your genes that the human, you should stay in a group of people, you should make groups, etc. But how you are manipulating your colleagues, how you are behaving towards your teacher, how you are behaving towards your patients, how you are behaving towards the different stimulus, this is not rooted in your genes. You have learned during the course of your development, you have learned during the course of your grooming in this particular environment. Okay? For example, the need for the achievement, need for the approval, need to attain the power, need to glorify, etc. Then social motivation, among the social motivation there is a thing known as a power motivation and the Machiavellianism. Let me explain this word, what it is. Okay, so now what happens? According to that theory, the disequilibrium must be in your physiological system. Now let's say there is a student who wants to become the CR of your class, your colleague, let's say someone. Now what he is doing, he's running the campaigns of his competency, he's running the he's trying to impress the whole class, he's trying to utilize a different people. So this motivation, this disequilibrium is not in his physiological system. Yes, uh, this motivation, yes, this thing, his behavior is not rooted in the physiological system. His physiological system is running well. Okay, why I'm teaching you this? Let me tell you the difference between the biological motivation and the social motivation. In the previous slide, what we have learned, under the need of the thirst, under the need of the hunger, your physiological system goes into the disequilibrium thing, right? This red box. But under the need of this social motivation, your biological system is running well, right? But now what happens, what we see in the behavior, that that particular guy or that particular individual, he is so much motivated that he is running the campaigns, he is ignoring his studies, etc, etc, etc. So for that theory, the derived reduction theory, there must be a disequilibrium in the basic biological systems. But when we are applying that theory on the social motivation or on the social needs or the social attractions of people, there is no disequilibrium found in the physiological system. So that was the basic question, that there is something wrong with that theory, right? Got my point? So when applying that derived reduction theory on the social motivation, it fails basically, because it is well explained, it is well experimented for the biological motivation. Okay, so that theory is again failed. Why? There is a need to attain the power. There is obviously, everyone wants the limelight. No? Yes, it is. Everyone wants that when he or she enters the classroom, that there must be the clapping, there must be there must be a feeling that a legend has come, isn't it? It is rooted in our genes, it is rooted in the human behavior. So then there is another thing, Machiavellianism, that the people are using the other people for their own purpose. So because of these differences, that theory have got some issues, that theory have got some criticism. Let me just tell you this thing, that what is this Machiavellianism. Machiavellianism basically is a product of narcissism and the psychopathy. You will read in detail what is this narcissism, where it is produced, etc., etc., in the later on this section C. But let me tell you one thing about this narcissism, is that the self love. Self love mean I am the perfect, there is no one who can match me. Unconsciously, if someone have if someone have this motive, or someone have this thought, that that the thing that I am doing, no one can do in my way. This behavior, this particular personality type is known as the narcissist personality. If this narcissism, this self love is only present in an individual's personality, we will label it as the narcissist personality. But if along with this narcissism, that particular individual tries to prove in the social settings that everyone should obey me, everyone should learn it, that no one is greater than me, means he is trying to do some psychopath things in his behavior, then this combination of these two is known as the Machiavellianism. Got it? What is Machiavellianism and the narcissism? Basic difference: narcissism is only limited towards the that particular individual, right? But if the psychopathology involves, if the psychopath behavior is involved with this narcissism, then we labeled it as the Machiavellianism. So our that drive reduction theory is failed to explain this Machiavellianism, this power factor, this power politics, etc., these things. So for that thing, another theory came into existence known as a Maslow's theory, very famous one. This Maslow man is very famous in the psychology literature. He basically inspired by the Jesus. The basic question that came into Maslow's mind is that why the Jesus sacrificed his life for the whole humanity, or why the people are so generous that they even didn't care about their own life. As according to another famous psychologist known as the Freud, Sigmund Freud, he said that uh, we uh, we always run towards the life instinct or towards the life thing, and our whole motivation, our whole biology works, our whole psychology works to avoid the death thing, right? So but here Maslow observed that Jesus sacrificed his life, people sacrifice their own lives for the sake of other people. So that question triggers the Maslow's mind, that there is something we should work with the motivation. So for the sake of his theory, for the sake of his research, he started interviewing the most successful people of that time, like the presidents, like those people who did the great sacrifices, etc. He started studying those people. Then he formulated he presented a hypothesis that how these people are different from the rest of people, how these people become so generous that they can sacrifice their own life. So based upon these observations, based upon these interviews, he formulated his theory in the back in the 70s, known as the Maslow theory of needs. So far good theory. Now according to him, now concentrate on this slide. He presented theory in a triangle form or in a pyramid form. The significance of this pyramid is that those things which have placed on the base of the pyramid or the base of the triangle, they contain the more weightage. The weightage of the physiological need is always greater than the self-actualization things, mean that greater or lesser, he defined according to the survival needs. Self-actualization is not necessary for the survival, but the physiological needs are necessity for the survival thing. Got it? You can live without pursuing your talent, without showing your creativity, but you cannot live without the food, without the water, without the extremes of temperature, right? So the purpose of describing this theory in the triangular form is that the base or the base of the triangle got the more attention, need have the more weight, contain the more weight as compared to the tip of the triangle when it comes to the survival thing, right? So second purpose is that uh, this pyramid cannot be established, this pyramid cannot withstand itself if the basic elements or the elements from the base of this pyramid lost. For example, you build a pyramid by keeping the things on the tip, just remove the base. For example, just uh, uh, took some Legos, took some blocks from your home, build a pyramid, and when the pyramid is completed, remove the base. What will happen? The whole structure will follow itself, right? So, in the same way, this happens with the motivation thing. If at any part of your life, let's say an individual is at the steam need, let's say suddenly his physiological needs become lost, then what will happen? He will again come at the physiological level. Got my point? Why he didn't presented his theory in a circular form? Why didn't presented his theory by drawing the arrows? He presented in a triangular form because base got the more advantage in terms of survival, and individual have to climb, individual have to rise in a ladder fashion, with the base got the more weight, then above, then above, then above, right? Now, the third most important presumption, third most important point about this theory is that for the step above to be completed, like for example, if someone has to promote from the physiological need towards the safety needs, then the physiological need should be fulfilled at any cost, right? Until unless these physiological needs are not completed, an individual cannot be promoted towards the safety needs. If someone has to promote it from the safety needs towards the belonging needs, then what will happen? He has to fulfill first is the safety needs. Now let me tell you what are the these checkpoints when an individual can climb from one step towards the end the step. Hopefully this overview is good enough so far. Okay, so according to this theory, first motivation after the birth is our the physiological motivation. An individual right after birth needs of food, needs of water, needs of warmth, these things. If the physiological motivation is enough, then we think about our safety. Safety means both things. One is the physical safety, that is your shelter need, that is your security need, that is your other thing. And other aspect of the safety is that the safety towards yourself, the safety towards your physiological needs. For example, in simple words, this safety level to complete it, there must be two checkpoints. One is that the external safety is there or not in the environment, and the safety regarding the physiological things. This food, this water should be enough for my rest of life or not. If this checkpoint is completed, then I will promote towards the belonging. Then that individual needs a friends, a family, the community, etc. Right? So after the safety level, there's another level known as the belonging. Belonging is that uh, an urge, an internal desire of our mind to attach ourselves with some group in the community. For example, you belongs to the dentistry group. The dentistry word is the most important word for the rest of your life because it represents you at the community level, right? So the profession, our religion, our caste system, our ideology, this all comes under this belonging thing, right? There is a need, there is a basic need that we need this belonging. We need to belong towards a group. Now what's the checkpoint of moving from belonging to the team need? Is that this belonging should be unconditional. Now focus on this word, unconditional. What is mean by unconditional? People in the particular group which I am claimed, which I claimed that I belong to this particular group, they should accept me as it is. Whether I am fair, whether I am black, either I am tall, either I am short, either I am chubby, etc. Whatever I am, who I am, whatever abilities I have, my group should accept me as it is. Got it? So after this belonging level, then the Maslow said that there is another urge in our mind which is known as the steam urge or the self-esteem urge. It is simply defined as the something should be in our mind, a piece of our mind, which is known as, in simple words, the piece of our mind. What is mean by piece of our mind? That I have did something in my lifetime. I achieved this mastery after doing the BDS. Now I have completed my post graduation. This is the esteem need, right? Now after completed this post graduation, I have further did this specialty, that specialty. Now the world known me as the doctor this. Okay, I am the specialist in the veneer manufacturing. I am an implantologist. I wrote around the 400 research papers, etc., etc. Got it? The recognition, the need of the recognition. Now how this esteem comes, I will not go into the detail because it's a much detail which is beyond the scope of this undergrad. Simple, in simple words, steam need fulfills when our internal desires matches with the external environment. For example, you guys want to become an engineer, your parents put into you this dentistry thing, then you cannot achieve this steam thing for the whole of your life. For right now, this explanation is fair enough because if someone wants to know how this steam and how this belonging actually fulfills, then go on the internet. There's a lot of stuff available regarding the Maslow's thing. You will know about what is the internal stream, what is external stream, what is the balance, etc., etc. Now let's move to the next level. Let's say if someone have now fulfilled the physiological need, safety need, belonging need to a group from which he can claim that I belongs to this group, and on that particular group, on that particular belonging, he achieves or she achieves the esteem thing, that is a recognition. Okay, now this group knows me who I am. Then he or she will pursue towards the actualization. What is self-actualization? The fullest potential of an individual, the fullest creativity, the thing nature have created you guys with an inbuilt speciality. So self actualization is another name of recognizing that speciality. Got it? That who I am. When you become selfless, when you become totally indulged in that particular quality, you polish that quality, etc. Now let's assume in 1 minute that why not everyone, like at this particular level, all of you have fulfill your physiological needs, safety need, belonging needs, team needs, more or less, then why you guys are not self-actualized so far? Huh? This is a question. The reason is that there are only, as I said, to move from the physiological thing towards the safety thing, there is a checkpoint, there is a border known as that. This physiological thing should be showed for the rest of life, which is impossible in reality, right? Only those individuals who will do the sabr, who will say that okay fine, if God created me, then God has arranged the food, the water, the shelter for me for the rest of my life, then only this thing can be fulfilled. In the same way, there is no group which accepts ourselves as it is, which I mentioned earlier, the unconditioned positive regard or the unconditioned acceptance. So if we accept ourselves with all our shortcomings, then only this belonging need can be fulfilled. In the same way, this esteem thing, this is again not easy to complete because there is always a conflict between the external esteem and the internal esteem. We want something, but the society wants something else. Until unless you by your own self didn't resolve this conflict, didn't accept your own self, then you cannot fulfill this esteem need. Now, got the point? Why we are not claiming towards this self-actualization thing? Got it? So now remember the first slide, that charger slide. Let me show you again. Now interpret it after you have read that no one can motivate you until you motivate yourself, until you accept yourself, right? Okay, so now see one by one in a little bit detail, then the lecture would be over. Now the physiological needs. Now by looking on these two illustrations, let me tell you, please tell me what these guys want. Obviously, this little child, she wants food. Huh? Let put yourself into her position, and can you study in this condition? If God forbid you're living in this condition, obviously not, right? You cannot. We cannot say anything about the steam. She didn't need a steam. She didn't need a recognition. She don't want that her name should be blink on every billboard or every signboard. She wants a food. When the food thing will be completed, then she will progress on that pyramid. In the same way, what these guys need also need a sleep, the basic physiological need. Now what they want, here is a shortcoming of the safety needs or the second step. These guys don't want the recognition, these guys don't want the self actualization, these guys don't want the these guys just want the security. Now what he or she wants the belonging, a group to belong, people who should accept this guy, right? Maybe he have enough food, maybe he have the enough shelter, maybe he have the enough physiological resources to continue his life, but psychologically this will suffer until unless he didn't join or some group didn't join this guy. Okay? In the same way, what she wants a high esteem, right? Now, obviously, self-actualization term first introduced by this Maslow genius. According to him, the self-actualizers are those people who make the best use of their inherent potential, inherent capabilities, inherent things which nature have gave them, and they utilize their maximum potential. What is the profile of this self-actualizers? They have they are always autonomous. They always, uh, as I said, as I mentioned earlier, for someone to become self-actualized, to reach the self-actualization level, he must first accept himself, then he must accept the rest of the world. So the one who accepts himself, always obviously or she will have the autonomy. What is autonomy? I can do my own decisions. This is the first quality, the most foremost important quality. Then he should have the fellowship with the humanity. Doesn't matter if someone belongs to me or not belongs to me, I belongs to everyone. Got my point? Right? Then when he or she or someone accepts the humanity, accepts the rest of people, then what will happen? The profound interpersonal relationships, the relationships, the excellent relationship with everyone, right? Obviously, when we have the good relationship with our colleagues, good relationship with our working environment, then obviously we have the non-hostile sense of humor. Sense of humor is basically a reflection or the tongue slip which we are using in a humoric way to express our thoughts, to express our grief, to express our negative emotions or positive emotions towards someone. Let's say someone who accepts himself, who accepts rest of the people with all the negatives, with all the shortcomings. Obviously, he or she would have the non-damaging sense of humor. Got my point? And when accepting own self obviously is not easy, when accepting the rest of people is not easy, obviously everyone is not perfect, right? So there are basically two sides of a picture. One is a black, one is the white. You should not solely focus on the black side or on the white side. If you want to become a self actualizer, then you have to see everyone in the gray side, in the gray filter. What is a gray filter? I mean, by gray filter I mean you should accept your colleagues, you should accept your teachers, you should accept your patients in future as it is. As no one is purely bad, no one is purely good. Everyone have his strengths, everyone has its shortcomings, right? So when you will achieve this esteem thing, when you will accept yourself, when you will accept the rest of the people, then obviously you will have the peak experiences. Now you relate how these things are related with each other. First you have to improve the autonomous self, take your decisions and start taking their credit or start taking their blame of your decisions. Yes, I did this, I am accepting this, right? Then accept yourself, accept your other people based upon this gray picture, right? Then there must be a, obviously when you accept the people, then there must be the non-hostile sense of humor. And by doing all these things, these things are not easy. Again, these things are not easy. You will got the peak experiences which help you to ascend the self-actualizer level. Now, obviously, they have the efficient perception of reality. They have the comfortable acceptance of self. As without accepting the self, we cannot claim the steps. and they have the spontaneity. Spontaneity is that they are not the dual nature people. Their inner self and their outer self are working in a very coherent way, or in a very homogeneous way, right? Then they are obviously task centering. They are always focusing on the things which they need at the moment. What are the pros of this theory? Obviously, it provides a clear framework. It provides the explanation of the social needs. It provides the explanation of the human behavior beyond the biological needs. What about the drawbacks? This theory is not universal. Why not universal? Because the need of the belongingness, it obviously, in every culture you not cannot accept the people as it is. Let me explain how. For example, you are living in a Hindu culture, you cannot accept the people that are not of your religious domain. Got my point? As a Hindus of the superior caste, they are not accepting the people of the other caste. So it is not, this area is not universal. People are bound by their social norms, social things, right? Social laws. And the level of motivation can be deceived by the people, as we said that. Actually, this problem is not with this theory. This problem is with the definition of the motivation. As we said earlier in the start of lecture, that the motivation is something which cannot be measured directly. It is something which should be reflected in the behavior of the people. So let's say someone is stuck at the basic physiological needs, and he is showing that he accepts all the people should trust him, and basically he is want to try to achieve the power, he want to try to achieve the attention of the other people. So in this way, this theory can deceive us. So these are the two drawbacks of this theory. Now, so let's take the example of a hospital in the last 2 minutes, and let's see how this theory applies to us, or how this theory applies to medical people or the dental people. Physiological needs are obstructed by, as a patient admits in the hospital, let's say someone with the squamous cell carcinoma, and it involves a little portion of the tongue, it involves a lower lip. So doctor diagnosed him that, and because of this carcinoma, he is unable to open his mouth. Now what happened that, for the basic physiological things, for the food, for the water, for the thirst, he become totally dependent on the hospital staff. So this first level is compromised. How the safety is obstructed, or how the safety is compromised, as we have said that safety involves the two things. One is the physical safety, and another one is the safety of your basic physiological things. Now the patient becomes sick, now the patient becomes ill, so this safety thing become totally compromised. There is no guarantee that will I recover or will I not recover, right? If someone got, let's say, the caries, there is a deep concern that maybe this will spread towards other teeth, maybe I become the toothless. How will I will eat? Okay. Now the third level is the belongingness level. As the patient is away from the home, as the patient is labeled as the sick, so now the people will see him as the sick. People will keep a distance, so this belonging thing become obscured. And obviously when the belonging become obstructed, when the belonging become compromised, then ultimately the steam thing automatically compromised. Now would you think that that person who is perfectly healthy about 1 week back, now he can claim that I am healthy, he can claim that I did enough, I am the good at the right moment, and ultimately the actualization need will be impacted or would be obscured. Now now what you can do? Basic physiological needs, yes, you can provide the food, the doctor can provide the drugs, the hospital can provide the bedding, the comfortable setting. Safety is obviously the responsibility of the administration. Belongingness is the responsibility of the nursing staff, that they must and the doctor, that they must empathize the patient, that you are not the alone, you're not alone at that moment. It's not merely your fault that you become ill or you become sick. This thing happens to the humans, other humans. In the same way, steam need can be provided if you will follow the BPS approach. What is the BPS approach? The biopsychosocial approach. Along with treating the disease, along with correcting the biology, you have to put focus on the psychology and the social things. What are the psychological and the social things? For example, the counseling sessions. For example, the literature things. For example, by providing the facts and figures which are described in the literature, by 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 not assuming your patient as the ill person or the ill object by assuming that he's also a normal human being, right? And ultimately, a self-actualization thing can only be provided if in the future we can make him healthy. Now that's it. So if you guys have any questions, then please write in the comment box so that I can answer him it. Or is everything clear? So strange. Right after this, please go to that Moodle learning management system, and there are the videos posted, and see it. Pros are that of this Maslow theory. Maslow theory pros is that it also explains the social behaviors of the people. Like if someone is seeking the power, if someone is trying to dominate in a particular people of group, then we can say that the belonging needs are compromised, or he or she is trying to achieve the belonging needs. If someone is, if your patient is all, if you're, let's say, in the future you're starting your dental practice, and you're hiring the staff, and the among the people, the one person who is good in work but is always concerned about the salary thing, then it means that that person is still stuck at the basic physiological things. Got it? Let's say if in a group of people you have, as in the dentistry, you guys have to complete the quota, you guys have to complete the group work, group assignments in the future. So if someone among your group is trying to utilize other people for the sake of him, if someone is too much selfish, then you can relate his behavior with that triangle. So these are the pros. While previously we are just having the derived reduction theory. By using the derived reduction theory, we cannot accurately describe that why this individual is behaving in this way, whereas all the physiological needs of his or her are completed. Got it? So this theory gave us insight about the social behavior, about the overall behavior of a person, why the particular person is doing this thing or is showing this sort of behavior. Okay, so any questions?